I'm Jess.
And I'm clearly not Mitch.
That's right. Who are you?
And this is Nerdcast.
To the Batmobile. Let's go. Atomic batteries to power. Turbines to speed. Roger. Ready to move out.
And this is News and Views.
What is going on? Okay guys, we're gonna speed through some news this week because thanks to the AI, we missed a show. But we want you to be all caught up. In an effort to keep the console wars alive, Reuters reported on a limited survey with results showing that the PS4 is leading over the Xbox One. The funny thing about this is they completely glossed over the fact that most people surveyed would not be buying new hardware this season. That includes hardware such as the 3DS.
Which nobody wanted in the first place.
Sonic was announced as a playable character in the new Smash Bros. Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze is delayed, and there will be Mario and Luigi Wii Motion Plus controllers, releasing on November 1st. Now you can really tell who's player 1 and who's player 2. Don't worry, Mitch. You'll always have the green one.
Oh, man.
Nintendo also mentioned a little change in the new Zelda game. Yeah, just a tiny one. Doesn't really affect the gameplay or change how they've made games for years or anything. You can just complete dungeons in any order.
I'm gonna do the water temple first.
That's suicide!
That's how I roll.
In case you haven't found out yet, there's a new update for your PlayStation 3.
Oh yeah, I'll go do that right now, and maybe it'll take about 10 years, or whenever the AI lets us out, whichever happens first.
Well, yes, there is that, but this update fixes that. The update time, not the studio's little AI problem. Previously, you had to be a PlayStation Plus member to have automatic system software updates, but now everyone who has a PSN ID and a PlayStation 3 can also use this feature. Also, part of the update, trophies now come with privacy settings.
So now I can hide all of my Hannah Montana trophies.
Yes, and it's why I'm embarrassed to have you on my friends list.
I can't stop.
Good news for you, Mitch. You can redeem yourself on PC. Capcom is having a sale for their 30th anniversary. Games like Dead Rising 2, Remember Me, Resident Evil 6, and Super Street Fighter 4 are on sale on Steam. Until tonight, actually. So hurry up and get on that.
So, it turns out that when Sandra Bullock isn't making buddy cop movies, she's actually a damn good actress. Gravity is the story of two American astronauts trapped in what can be safely referred to as the worst possible thing to happen in space. Debris destroys a NASA ship working on the Hubble Space Telescope, and Sandra Bullock, as a young rookie astronaut, must work with the experienced George Clooney astronaut to survive in a place where there is no air, gravity, people, food, or awful buddy cop movies. And it's phenomenal. More experienced critics than I have already called this movie something close to a ride at Universal Studios, and they couldn't be more right. The movie certainly uses the same tricks, utilizing the full 3D effect to draw the audience in and whip their minds around a little. But it's also more than that. Gravity manages to tell a powerful but simple character story. Sandra Bullock as rookie astronaut Ryan Stone completely works in a way that forces me to apologize to her in the event that I ever meet her in public. Her resume of previous films do no justice to her abilities. Gravity is like the unveiling of her secret powers, and maybe, just maybe, we need to start taking her a little more seriously. Meanwhile, George Clooney is in this. Of course he's good, it's George Clooney. Moving on. The biggest downside of this film is its own schizophrenia.
Actually, it's more like dissociative identity disorder. Mitch doesn't really know what schizophrenia is.
Gravity's big, ride-like appearance and presentation are weighed down when the movie tries to be deeper, emotional parts of the story, and the movie jumps from loud to soft, fast to slow, and fun to serious in dramatic shifts. One moment, Bullock is hanging on for dear life, running out of air and desperate to survive. Then in the next cut, not even the next scene, the next cut, she's free-floating calmly and pretty much just letting George Clooney die in space. You monster. But it's not like these slower moments are out of place. They're just very pronounced. Once I was aware of them, they almost made me anxious for the action to start again. And it's going to be up to the individual viewer to decide if that works for each person. For me, though, it totally worked. The slower moments punctuated the adrenaline rushes that were the action scenes, and once this movie hits its climax, I was completely taken in. Gravity is an intense experience, which should be considered a high compliment for any film. The 3D, if you can handle 3D, combined with some genuinely impressive computer-generated space stations and space garbage, makes Gravity uniquely beautiful and a joy to look at. Some might find this movie a little lacking, what with its minimal story run by only 2 characters. But for others, that focus is only going to make the movie more intense. Personally, I love this thing. I walked out of the theater loaded on adrenaline, and I say that if you can handle it, you definitely need to go see it.
And for a quick TV time update, the writers of The Simpsons must think that their material is getting stale because they decided to kill off a character. They said the actor won an Emmy for playing said character, but that doesn't really help much in narrowing it down. Personally, I'm more excited for the new season of The Walking Dead that returned last night. And for Doctor Who fans, David Tennant will now be starring in the American version of Broadchurch. Did we mention that he's also in the original UK version?
Beyond Two Souls sits in a difficult position in the gaming world. Due to the ongoing debate about games being an art form, the industry is fragmented into 2 factions. One side believes that games are merely games, or, at the closest, a new kind of sport. The artsier side sees games as a means of storytelling, and in the realm of Beyond Two Souls, that's the side of the tracks we're playing on today. It's hard to review a game that spends its time trying not to be a game. Beyond Two Souls is much less of a game and much more of a long string of cutscenes. But even as I say that, I have to acknowledge it's a project that could only have been done in the medium of video games. Beyond Two Souls is not a movie, but it is not a video game in the traditional sense either, putting this review in a precarious position. Instead of what it is, let me tell you what it's not. BTS is the life story of Jodie Foster, a girl with a connection to an entity.
And Entity is basically a ghost, but not a ghost.
The game portrays Jodie's entire life as it jumps around her timeline, having ghost adventures and being thrown into terrible events. The story is the absolute selling point here, the only selling point, I'd say. Jodie's life as a gifted person is tragic and full of playable sequences designed to twist hearts or just be full-on insane. This game is also full-on beautiful. Never has a game been so realistic.
Wait, is that Ellen Page? Oh my god, that's Ellen Page!
Why, yes, Jess, your scripted question is spot on. Yes, that's Ellen Page, as played by Ellen Page, fully and realistically rendered by all the power the PS3 has to offer. Willem Dafoe is in this game too, officially making them the first ever A-list actors to star in a video game. And they spend the whole game demonstrating the difference between professional acting and whatever everyone else has been doing all these years. Paige gets a special commendation for her tour de force performance as Jodie Foster, becoming one of the most fleshed out characters ever, not just in a video game. Sadly, controls for said events are a tad finicky. Combat is especially bad because it's based solely on the right analog stick. The player is supposed to move the stick in response to context of Jodie's movements. The problem is that the game has both a block and a dodge function, one which requires you to move the stick towards an attack and the other away. The whole process is just a mess, and I found myself making mistakes time and again. That said, you can't actually fail in Beyond Two Souls, at least as far as I could figure. Only change the events in each mission. But even then, the game is set on a strict storyline that can only branch so far, which can make your choices or mistakes seem ultimately insignificant. The easiest way to judge Beyond Two Souls is to divide my audience along the industry lines. Adrenaline junkies probably aren't going to like this game, because they probably won't have the patience to sit for the game's slower segments or awkward controls. For everyone else, this game is a revelation. If this game ends up making enough of an impact, it could cause some major shifts in the industry, especially in terms of hiring professional actors to voice and model the characters. Looking forward to seeing what Quantum Dream could be doing in the future, and I'm really excited to see what they're capable of once they get the power of the PS4 behind their development. But in the meantime, this is the most beautiful game on the PS3, hands down. I highly recommend it.
Highlights to Beyond Two Souls include being homeless, ghost puzzles, overthrowing governments, and experiencing death. So like every other week, we're just going to go ahead and assume that Jeremy's around here somewhere.
Comic Crash.
of owls that watches all the time, ruling Gotham from a shadowed perch behind granite pine. They watch you as you prepare.
Oh, well, that ruins that. Apparently, you can't hear me through this mask. But, since we're talking about costumes, I wanted to show off my awesome Court of Owls costume, especially since I'm here in Gotham City. Why am I here in Gotham City? Investigations, that's why. This is Comic Crash. As for reviews this past week, there was a new Vertigo series, Coffin Hill. I'm not totally sure how to feel about it. There's like 2 stories happening at once, and I love them both, but I don't necessarily love them together. They feel a bit too disjointed. But overall, it shows promise as long as it can sort itself out. 7.5 out of 10. Superman Wonder Woman #1, which I hate to admit, but Charles Soule gives Superman and Wonder Woman serious chemistry as a couple, something Johns failed to do even though he started it. Soule may make me accept this for the time being, which is incredibly impressive. In addition, Tony Daniels' art is awesome, and the story, while a bit all over the place, leads to an epic conclusion of massive proportions, with a threat that actually lives up to being a challenge for the titular duo. 8 out of 10. Suicide Squad #24 has Matt Kindig taking over. He's another rising star like Charles Soule, popping up all over the place and generally impressing me. Not quite as consistently as Soule. But he's picked up the reins from Alice Cott almost perfectly, working well with the same characters at the same level of skill. This issue gets a little rushed at the end, and what I thought was Amanda being super duplicitous turns out to be something else that wasn't quite as interesting, but overall I'm loving it pretty much as when Cott took over, which is a lot more than the first couple issues, which were terrible. 8 out of 10. Thor, God of Thunder #14. It's not just the softer artwork of Ron Garney after Esad Ribic, but after the skillfully plotted and mythologically epic God Butcher story, the Accursed just feels like a big step down into a very simple and generic kind of Thor story, dark fantasy story. It's not exactly bad, but the series created some insanely grand expectations that this arc isn't coming close to achieving. I'm sure there's some great character interactions and some comedy, but the whole thing feels slightly hollow. And part of it's just that it's an obviously timed story to ride the heels of the upcoming Thor the Dark World movie with the same villain, Malekith the Accursed. 7 out of 10. Forever Evil Arkham War #1. I've been reading the classic No Man's Land crossover epic lately, so I see a lot of shades of that in here. No power in Gotham, the city's divided up amongst major villains, but here the scale is bigger and more the focus, so it lacks some of the personal human drama and charm of No Man's Land. But taken on its own, Arkham War is shaping up to be a very interesting story, with Bane metaphorically being the Batman hero of Forever Evil. Like how Luthor is the Superman hero of this status quo in the main story. 9 out of 10. Chew was 10 out of 10 as usual, #37, but I have to note that it's impressive that Layman can still manage to surprise me with how weird the food powers can get at this point. Rocket Girl #1. I got myself a little too hyped for Rocket Girl. I do so love the artwork of Amy Reeder. It wasn't quite what it was on Batwoman, but it was still Amy Reeder. Her art certainly carried tons of energy and fun, but there wasn't much room for her to stretch her creativity fully. The story was interesting, but it's a bit limited in focus. There's potential here in the character especially, but the plot could be a bit better. Somewhere between 7 and 8 out of 10. I want to say 8, but I feel like I'm being a little generous. One of the big highlights this week, though, was Batman #24. I want to say that it was perfect. It was a massive double-length issue of an already usually 30-page series. It was epic, climactic, iconic. It completely redefined one of the most definitive moments in Batman history without bastardizing it, and it enhanced it completely. The only problem is that it's so final, it seems weird that we have so much to go in Zero Year. This is part, 4 out of 11. So this issue also begins the new second story in Zero Year, and something just rubbed me the wrong way about the pacing that got us from one to the other. I guess, really, the Red Hood gang story ended perfectly, and then Riddler's story just began. There wasn't really a transition of any kind. But it was still amazing, so it's still a 9.5 out of 10. Finally, last week was the Season 2 premiere of Arrow. While I feel like we jumped back into things too suddenly, it was mostly good. It was just weird that we began with Diggle and Felicity just having found the apparently missing Ollie, who was back on the NU. I feel like we should have had an episode of them searching for him to transition between seasons better, but once things settled back in the groove, it was excellent. Everyone's MOs and status quos have totally been shaken up by the climactic events of last season's finale, and Ollie has to become something more than he was to truly save the city.
I am vengeance. I am the night. I am Batman.
And with that, I need to go back undercover. So... Alright, the coast is clear again. Gotham is just getting the New York Comic Con stream, so I've only got some of the Friday stuff. Check the Facebook page for the rest. New horror series is coming from Image Comics called Outcast. It's by Robert Kirkman, The Walking Dead and Invincible, with artist Paul Azaceta. It revolves around an exorcist and some stuff like that, so it should be interesting. Everyone loves Kirkman. Progressing the story for the first time in about a decade, Joss's brother Zach Whedon will be writing a new Firefly comic, Serenity, Leaves on the Wind. It takes place after Serenity, the first piece of Firefly thing to do that in forever. Marvel Comics, over the past 2 weeks or so, has been releasing a lot of those one-word teasers with a creative team, and we know what some of them mean now. Sinners is referring to Ghost Rider joining the Thunderbolts in February, and Carlos Barberi taking over art duties, so it'll look better. Wrath is about Richard Isanov taking over writing and art for Savage Wolverine with number 14 in January. The story set in the 30s. Judgment and Trial were a joint teaser for The Trial of Jean Grey, a January-starting crossover between All New X-Men and Guardians of the Galaxy, both already written by Brian Michael Bendis. Corporate is All New X-Factor, that's the full title, by Peter David, which should please fans of the recently canceled long-running X-Factor series, also by Peter David. It'll be a team of corporate-sponsored superheroes, a bit like the Third Doom Patrol with Thayer Jost, including such members as Polaris, Quicksilver, and Gambit. Global was for Avengers World, where the Avengers have to get bigger. Hickman's Avengers has already been huge in scale, so I can only imagine how big his and Nick Spencer's new series is supposed to get. One, not from a teaser, but a new launch nonetheless, will be Avengers Undercover, a pseudo-sequel to Avengers Arena with the same creative team. This isn't the second season of Avengers Arena that he's been talking about, but it does pick up with 5 survivors of Murder World going undercover to take down the Masters of Evil. And we find out that my favorite character, Deathlock, is surviving. Mind Bubble was a tease for Pascal Alix joining Rick Remender for an upcoming arc on Captain America, involving old villains like Red Skull, and new ones like Dr. Mind Bubble, a psychedelic super soldier from the 60s. Extinction was a tease for the big second arc of Avengers AI, where the team is going a full 10,000 years in the future. Still not as bold as DC 1 Million, but whatever. Trust was a tease for a new series, Loki, Agent of Asgard, with writer Al Ewing and artist Lee Garbett. Atonement was a tease for an upcoming Black Widow series by Nathan Edmondson and Phil Noto. For DC, we got an announcement of Forever Evil Blight, which is another mini-story within Forever Evil, 18-part arc running through the October to March issues of Justice League Dark, Constantine, Pandora, and Phantom Stranger. The current Syndicate's invasion has significantly enhanced levels of evil in the universe, and that evil has a physical manifestation, Blight. Kevin Smith will be returning to Batman for an out-of-continuity miniseries. I seriously hope this is finally his conclusion to White and Geyer, which was left hanging on an amazing halfway point about 4 years ago. American Vampire returns as an ongoing in March as American Vampire's second cycle. The first new arc will take place in the late 60s involving Skinner and Pearl. Big changes are coming for the Superman family after Krypton returns. Superboy is apparently going to die, and we replaced with the character he was a clone of, Jonathan Wayne Kent, son of Clark and Lois from an alternate timeline, an adopted son of Teen Titans villain Harvest. If Supergirl's moving to another title, I hope that doesn't mean her series is canceled, but it sounds like it. Biggest stuff came from Batman. 2014 marks the 75th anniversary, and DC is prepared to celebrate their biggest selling character. Spring will mark the beginning of a weekly Batman series, Batman Eternal, involving artist Jason Fabok and set with rotating writers including Scott Snyder, James Tynion IV, John Layman, Ray Fox, and Tim Seeley. It's said that the story will alter the status quo significantly. There's also going to be a 96-page Detective Comics number 27, wink wink, including contributions from Paul Dini, Brad Meltzer, and Frank Miller. and it will be the end of John Layman's run on the series, to be replaced by Francis Manapul and Brian Buccellato. But the biggest news is that Stephanie Brown is coming back in Batman Eternal. She is my favorite character in the DC Universe, and this is the greatest thing that has happened to me all year.
Want to know how I got these
Okay.
scars?
That's all I have time for, guys.
Why so serious? Let's put a smile on that face.
Voted Maryland and DC's best and most terrifying haunted house, Bennett's Curse is located close by in Jessup, Maryland, and a must-see. For over a decade, the tale of Castle Bennett's demise and the terror of the sanctuary of insanity has horrified thousands. Prepare yourself for a fresh look into the world of 3D horror with their newest attraction, Zombie Kingdom, where the walls come alive to eat your flesh. Or maybe you want to check out the House of Vampires and their biggest and scariest show ever at Bob's Park. Well, whatever you want to scare you, you'll find it at Bennett's Curse.
Everybody loves a circus, right? So why don't you go check out Legends of the Fog and check out their Sinister Circus, a traveling freak show. If they haven't freaked you out too much, you can evacuate to the safety of their haunted hayride. Though, let's say it's 4 scare barns, a huge junkyard, and of course, the dark and creepy rides. If you survive that, then take refuge in Carson's Mansion. You know, just an old abandoned orphanage, perfectly safe.
The first settlers long ago found their new home too deadly, and in their desperation to survive, they turned to black magic. Thus, Creepy Woods was formed. This attraction is a horrifying trail with Hollywood-grade scares that have been featured on the Travel Channel. It's one of the area's best and most famous for a good reason. And if you think that you're not afraid of the dark, you should check them out. They just might change your mind.
Field of Screams in Olney is the most popular multi-haunt in the state. It has not 1, not 2, but 4 awesome haunts. You can take a walk on the Trail of Terror and a tour of the Illusion Manor. Or maybe you think you're brave enough for the Hades hayride. What about trying out your zombie survival skills in the newest attraction, Zombie Paintball Apocalypse? They also have great food and a big bonfire just meant for hanging out if that's not too scared for you. You know, crying in a corner and all that. And just so you know, this is a favor for a Nerdcast crew, so maybe you'll see us there too.
If you think you're tough, why not put your bravado where your mouth is, figuratively speaking, of course. Check out Creekside Manor. Here, an army of undead are called upon to fight off the werewolves and other vile creatures who have taken over, including you. If you can survive their 16 rooms of scares, maybe you're tough enough to try out their graveyard.
Over 200 years ago, Nightmare Manor, on a tragic night, received its historic name, Seth's Folly. The people who lost their lives there, and in the tragedies that followed, still haunt the manor to this day. Think you're brave enough to walk in their footsteps?
One of Maryland's most unique haunted houses, Kim's Crypt. This is a good old-fashioned terrifying walk through dark hallways, creepy corridors, ghoulish characters, and friendly cannibals, just waiting to have a bite. If you're feeling brave, we dare you to go.
Looking for something a little more authentic? Check out Fort Howard Haunted Dungeons, a historic military bunker from the War of 1812. Walk through their dungeons and cower from their thrills and chills. But watch out, because that soldier you see may actually be a real ghost.
Back for their 5th year, Heidi's Haunted Hills has even more in store for you. If you think you're tough, dare to take a walk on their trails of terror.
Who are you?
Well, I'm Lucas, and I'm the host of Anime Attack. Hello, welcome, and brace yourself for a heavy dose of anime oxidants on this installment of Anime Attack. But don't worry, I'm a pretend doctor. Today, we will be talking about, well, we're going to be talking about a couple of anime series, and even a couple of manga. Now then, to begin, first on the surgery block is a recent but maybe since forgotten psychological thriller. I speak, of course, about Paranoia Agent. The series revolves around a social phenomenon in the Tokyo area, Lil Slugger, who is a golden inline skate-clad assailant who seems to do more hit and runs than an intoxicated celebrity. The storytelling in this series, it's incredible. Each episode itself centers around one of Lil Slugger's victims, and it even tells a little bit about himself with each passing episode. From the same creator as such anime films, full-length films as Perfect Blue and Millennium Actress, Paranoia Agency makes a great warm-up for anyone looking to start their Halloween anime binge. Now available over the counter with an ID check is a series that has what every good Halloween should have in spades. Plenty of zombies and plenty of zombie killing. I talk, of course, about Sentai Filmworks' High School of the Dead. What would this most joyous of holidays be without, well, more undead human husks than an office party? For those who are in the know and are looking to relive the copious quantities of blood splattering, fan service slinging experience, or if you just haven't gotten around to it, there's no need for a second opinion to grab yourself 300 cc's of popcorn and marathon the adventures of a small band of high school students as they battle it out against the undead masses in a struggle to thrive and survive in the apocalypse that, well, we've all kind of really hoped for. Secretly, of course. In the spirit of the more graphic, Elfen Lied, or Elfen Lied, depending on your pronunciation, is a must-see. It's the story of a teenage, they say it as a Declonius girl named Lucy, who is essentially a mutant species with a lot of similarities to humans, with two great exceptions. The first of which being two horns sprouting out of her head and an extraordinary power to telekinetically manipulate and cut through objects within her range. Dealing with alienation and prejudice, Lucy seeks revenge in an ongoing and bloody tale of identity, regret, depravity, and the value of humanity through means of enough graphic violence and dismemberment to make even the strongest of stomachs start to churn and curdle. I can write you a prescription for that. Maybe, not really. But finally, in terms of anime series, a series that was spawned from a video game that grew so large that was then adapted into an anime series. It's so twisted and so dark that it was actually canceled in its second season due to the graphic nature of the show and a connection with a local murder. We're not talking about that. Malpractice. Anyways, I present, of course, to you the downright dark and sociopathic tale in all its glory, Higurashi no Naku Koroni. The series it's set in a small village of Hinamizawa, and the new arrival of a transfer student there who is accepted into an after-school social club of sorts. Japanese countryside, circa 1980s, new students. It's in an extracurricular group who plays board games mostly. Seems pretty standard, right? That's pretty much where the normality of this series kind of just falls flat right there. That's where it ends. In fact, this is the part where all concepts of sanity, reality, fact from fiction start to just disappear entirely. This is where it all begins, and where the pure horror is, and Higurashi truly begins. As annual murders and friends turning on each other by cruel and gruesome means becomes pretty much commonplace in this just about right cocktail of both murder and suspense bloodies the hands of everyone involved. Great series, highly recommended for Halloween. But before we end this Halloween installment of Anime Attack, here are a few manga to keep your eye out for. Available in children's chewable tablets is a personal favorite and one for the younger or more mild anime fans. I speak, of course, about Chibi Vampire, the series that follows the daily struggle of being a vampire, a teenage vampire, in a modern society, both having to fit in and feed without arousing too much attention. without all the sparkling and soap opera-esque drama that other popular vampires franchises seem to offer. Chibi Vampire is a slice-of-life comedy that does everything but disappoint on each page. And for the more intense manga readers, and yeah, brace yourself for this, I prescribe a more rigorous dose of goth, not to be confused with the kids who smoke in the back of your high school cafeteria. The one-shot manga is a collection of short stories that illustrate some of the darkest and most horrific corners of humanity, or lack thereof. A bit of a task to find a hard copy, but no matter how you get it, it's worth a read for the plethora of goosebump-inciting moments you'll experience with each page turn. This Halloween, take 2 of these and call me in the morning.
Mitch's Log, Week 4 of the AI takeover. The AI seems to have generated an entire human being. He calls himself Lucas, if he is in fact male. He has also seemed to have given himself a spot on the show. I have a text from Jeremy telling me not to trust him. I find that ominous and terrifying.
Got your nose.
Beware the court of owls that watches all the time, ruling Gotham from a shadowed perch behind granite and lime. They watch you for their hurt, they watch you in your bed. Speak not a whispered word of them, or they'll send a talon for your head.